Welcome, wanderer. Tonight, the Firefly carries us across the ocean to a quiet backyard in Pennsylvania, where the last light of autumn filters through the curtains of a willow tree. A girl has just moved to a new town, to a new life that doesn't quite fit yet, like a coat that's a little too big, waiting for her to grow into it. She doesn't know it yet, but the old tree at the edge of the yard has been waiting for her too. Some friendships bloom between people, and some bloom between worlds. Settle in and let the Firefly guide you gently into the story of Hazel and the willow tree. Hazel hated being tall. At 10 years old, she was already taller than most sixth graders, all long limbs and sharp angles that made her feel like a giraffe trying to hide in a herd of rabbits. The kids at her new school had noticed immediately, had made sure she knew she didn't fit, would never fit. Not here in this Pennsylvania suburb, where everyone seemed to have known each other since birth and liked the same music and wore the same brands and cared about things Hazel couldn't make herself care about. So, she spent her afternoons in the backyard of their new house, a modest 2-story with vinyl siding and a lawn that was mostly dandelions. Her parents were always working, her mom at the hospital, her dad at his office, both of them trying to make the move work, to justify leaving their old city for better jobs and lower cost of living. They meant well. They asked about school, but Hazel had learned to say fine in a way that ended conversations, and they were too busy to push. The backyard's only remarkable feature was the tree. It was a weeping willow, enormous and ancient, its long branches sweeping the ground like green curtains. The realtor had mentioned it was probably over 300 years old. One of the original trees that had stood here before the suburb was built in the 1950s. Hazel's parents had worried about it. Old trees meant maintenance, falling branches, expensive removal eventually. But Hazel had loved it on sight, and that love had been a rare moment of enthusiasm from their quiet daughter, so they'd bought the house. She spent hours under its canopy, reading or drawing, hidden from the world by curtains of leaves. It felt like a secret room, a place that belonged only to her. She first saw the girl on an afternoon in late September. Hazel had been lying on her back under the willow, watching the way light filtered through the leaves, when she noticed someone sitting on one of the lower branches. A girl, maybe 11 or 12, wearing a dress that looked like it was made of bark and moss. Her hair was long and moved like willow branches, even though there was no wind. And she was slightly see-through. Hazel could see the trunk of the tree behind her, could see right through her translucent skin to the patterns of wood grain beneath. Hazel sat up slowly, her heart hammering. The girl smiled. Her teeth were wooden, her eyes were knots in bark, and she was the most beautiful and strange thing Hazel had ever seen. "You can see me?" the girl said, and her voice was like wind through leaves and the creak of branches. "Finally, I've been so lonely." Hazel's voice came out as a whisper. "What are you?" "I live in the tree. I've always lived in the tree. I am the tree, in a way, and the tree is me." The girl tilted her head, studying Hazel with those impossible wooden eyes. "Most people can't see anymore. The last person who could was very old. She died decades ago. You're the first child in, I don't remember how long." "Are you a ghost?" "Not exactly. I'm a Dryad. Do you know what that is?" Hazel shook her head. "I'm the spirit of the tree. When the willow was young, I was young. Now that it's old, The girl looked down at her translucent hands. I'm fading with it, but slowly. Trees take a long time to die. Over the following weeks, the girl became Hazel's secret and her only friend. Her name was harder to pronounce than any sound Hazel had tried to make, so the Dryad told her to just call her Willow, like the tree. They talked for hours under the green canopy, Willow asking about the modern world she didn't understand. What are cars? Why do people stare at small glowing rectangles? Why does no one sit under trees anymore? And Hazel explaining as best she could, though she wasn't sure she understood most of it herself. Willow had been there for 300 years. She remembered when this land was forest, when native peoples had honored the tree, when European settlers had built the first farms and left the ancient willow standing because it seemed wrong to cut it. She remembered when the suburbs came, when the other old trees were cut down and paved over, when her tree stood alone in a sea of identical houses. The other Dryads left when their trees died, Willow said one afternoon in early October, her voice sad, or they faded away to nothing. I'm the only one left for miles. That's why I was so lonely. That's why I'm so glad you can see me. Hazel understood loneliness. She told Willow about school, about being too tall and too quiet and liking the wrong things, about eating lunch alone, about the whispers and eye rolls, about how it felt to be visible and invisible at the same time. Seen enough to be mocked, unseen enough to have no friends. You're not wrong, Willow said seriously. They are. There's nothing wrong with being tall or quiet or liking trees better than whatever they like. They're just small-minded. Young. Most of them will grow past it, hopefully. It was the first time anyone had suggested the other kids were the problem, not Hazel, and something in her chest loosened. But as autumn deepened and the willow's leaves turned gold and began to fall, Hazel noticed things about the tree she hadn't seen before. Dead branches. Sections of bark that were soft and crumbling. A hollow forming in the trunk where fungus grew in white shelves. One Saturday in late October, her parents had an arborist come to look at the tree. Hazel watched from her bedroom window as the man walked around the willow, tapping the trunk, examining the branches, making notes on a clipboard. She couldn't hear what he was saying, but she could see her parents' expressions growing more serious. That evening at dinner, her father broke the news. Honey, we need to talk about the tree. The arborist says it's dying, it's hollow in places, and there are several dead branches that could fall. It's a safety issue. We're going to need to have it removed. Hazel's fork clattered onto her plate. No, you can't. Her mother reached across the table. I know you love it, sweetheart, but it's dangerous. What if a branch fell while you were under it? What if it came down in a storm and hit the house? But it's been here for 300 years. Which is exactly why it's dying, Hazel. Trees don't live forever. Her father's voice was gentle but firm. We'll plant a new one. Something nice, maybe a Japanese maple. They're beautiful. I don't want a Japanese maple. I want the willow. Her parents exchanged glances, and Hazel saw them silently communicating in that way parents do. Her mother spoke carefully. Is this about your imaginary friend? Hazel felt her face burn. She'd been careless, had been caught talking to Willow by the tree, and when pressed had admitted, stupidly, that she had a friend who lived in the willow. Her parents had seemed relieved at first, thinking she'd made a real friend. When they realized she meant it literally, they'd grown concerned in that quiet way that meant therapy might be discussed soon. She's not imaginary. Honey, we know moving has been hard. We know school is difficult. It's completely normal to create a companion to help cope with that. But we can't keep a dangerous tree just because you've bonded with it. Hazel stood up from the table, her chair scraping loud against the floor. You don't understand. You don't listen. You never listen. She ran to her room and slammed the door, knowing it was childish but not caring, and threw herself on her bed to cry angry, frustrated tears. Later, when darkness had fully fallen, she slipped outside to the Willow. Willow was waiting, sitting on her usual branch, looking more translucent than ever. I heard, she said softly. Trees have good hearing when we want to. They're going to cut you down. I know. And they're right, Hazel. The tree is dying. I'm dying with it. Another year, maybe 2, and I would fade away anyway. At least this way it won't fall and hurt someone. But I'll lose you. Hazel's voice broke. You're my only friend. I know. I'm sorry. I wish there was another way. They sat together in miserable silence for a while. Then Willow spoke again, her wooden voice thoughtful. There might be. A way, I mean. Not to save this tree, that's beyond saving, but to save me. Hazel looked up. How? Long ago, when there were more of us, when the trees were thick and old spirits were common, we could sometimes move between trees. If we had a connection to both, something of the old tree planted with the new. But it only works if the new tree is the same kind, and if someone helps us, someone who can see us. You mean, I could help you move to a new tree? A new willow, young and healthy. If you planted something from this tree with it, a root cutting maybe, or bark, it would create a bridge. I could cross over before this tree is felled. But I'd be very weak at first. The new tree would be so small, and I would have to sleep while it grew. It might be years before I was strong enough to wake fully. But you'd be alive? In a sense. Changed, but alive. Hazel wiped her eyes. Then that's what we'll do. The next day was Sunday. Hazel asked her parents if she could get a tree from the garden centre to plant in memory of the willow. They agreed immediately, clearly relieved that she was accepting the situation and processing it in a healthy way. They gave her $40 and drove her to the nursery. Hazel walked past the Japanese maples and ornamental cherries, past the dogwoods and magnolias, until she found the willows. There were several varieties, but she chose the smallest weeping willow they had, barely 5 feet tall, its thin branches just beginning to cascade. It was young and healthy, its leaves bright green, its trunk flexible and strong. Her parents helped her choose a spot for it, not where the old willow stood, but off to the side, where Hazel could see it from her bedroom window. Her father dug the hole while Hazel watched, and her mother went inside to make lunch. That left Hazel alone with the young tree for a few minutes. She'd already prepared what she needed. The night before, Willow had shown her where a small root grew close to the surface near the base of the old tree. Hazel had carefully dug it up, just a piece, 6 inches long, thin as her finger, and wrapped it in damp paper towels. Now she unwrapped it carefully, knelt by the hole her father had dug, and placed the root cutting at the very bottom. Something old for something new, she whispered, the words Willow had taught her. A bridge between what was and what will be. Life continues. Life changes. Life remains. Then she added dirt to cover the root, and when her father came back, they planted the young willow together, settling it into earth, firming the soil around it, watering it thoroughly. That night, under the old willow's canopy for what might be the last time, Hazel and Willow performed the rest of the ritual. Willow placed her translucent hand against the ancient trunk, closing her wooden eyes. "Thank you for the wonderful 300 years," she said to the tree. "Thank you for life, for all the memories. I'll carry you with me, always." Then she walked with Hazel to the young willow, walked though her feet didn't quite touch the ground, and placed her other hand on its thin trunk. Hazel watched as Willow began to fade from the old tree, becoming fainter and fainter, like fog burning off in sunlight. At the same time, a faint shimmer appeared around the young willow, barely visible, like heat haze. It took almost an hour. By the end, Willow was gone from the old tree entirely. And in the young willow, Hazel could just barely see her. A faint outline, translucent, even by Dryad standards, curled up small inside the trunk. "Willow," she whispered. The faintest voice barely audible. "I'm here. But I'm so tired. I need to sleep now. Take care of the tree. I'll wake when I can. I hate that I can't be there for you right now. But talk to me. I'll be listening." And then she was gone, or seemed to be, silent and still. Hazel pressed her hand against the young tree's trunk and felt nothing but bark. But she believed, had to believe, that Willow was in there, somewhere, sleeping, waiting, growing slowly with the tree that would be her new home. The old willow was removed 2 weeks later, on a cold November morning. Hazel couldn't watch. She stayed in her room with her curtains closed while the tree service crew worked, listening to the grind of the chipper, the roar of chainsaws, the crash and thud of wood hitting ground. Her mother stayed home from work to be with her, sitting on her bed, not saying much, just being there. When it was done, when Hazel finally looked outside, the backyard looked naked and wrong. A wide stump remained where the ancient tree had stood, and scattered wood chips marked where its branches had fallen. But the young willow still stood in its new spot, thin and small and alive. Hazel tended it carefully through that first winter and into spring. She watered it when rain was scarce, cleared weeds from around its base, watched for signs of stress or disease. Her parents were pleased to see her taking responsibility, channeling her grief into care. She talked to it sometimes, though she got no response. Told the sleeping Dryad about school, still hard, but she'd found one other quiet girl who liked to read, and that was enough. About her parents, busy but trying. About how the backyard looked strange and empty, but the young willow was growing, had put out new leaves, had grown another foot taller. By the time school ended for the summer, Hazel had accepted that Willow might sleep for years, might sleep until Hazel was grown and gone, might never wake at all. But the tree was growing, and deep down, she knew Willow was all right. That was enough for her. 21 years later, Hazel stood in her parents' backyard on a cold November afternoon, holding her daughter's hand and looking at the willow tree. It had grown well. The thin sapling was now nearly 25 feet tall, its cascading branches creating a curtain of gold autumn leaves, its trunk thick and strong and healthy. It was beautiful, not as massive as the ancient willow had been, but mature enough to be graceful, established enough to seem permanent. "Mama, it's so pretty." Willow, 5 years old, all wild curls and bright energy, tugged at Hazel's hand. "Can I go under it?" Hazel smiled. Her daughter was named for the tree, though she'd never quite explained to her husband why that name had mattered so much. He'd loved it anyway, had said it suited their girl perfectly. "Go ahead, sweetheart. Be careful." Willow ran ahead, ducking under the trailing branches, her laugh ringing out clear and delighted. Hazel followed more slowly. At 31, she was comfortable with her height now, had grown into her long limbs, had found ways to be tall and graceful instead of tall and awkward. She'd left the US at 18 for university in London, had stayed for graduate school, had met Thomas there, had built a life. She visited her parents when she could, every few years usually, and always checked on the tree when she came. Sometimes, in quiet moments standing by the willow, she thought she felt something. A presence. But Willow the Dryad never appeared, never spoke, and Hazel had made peace with that. She'd saved her friend. That was enough. Mama, there's someone here." Hazel's heart stopped. She ducked under the branches to find her daughter standing very still, staring up into the tree with wide eyes. And there, sitting on a low branch, looking stronger and more solid than Hazel had seen her in 21 years, was Willow. The Dryad looked the same, forever 11 or 12, made of willow wood and leaves, with bark-grained skin and branch hair and eyes like knots in wood. But she was smiling, and her voice when she spoke was clearer than Hazel remembered. "Hello, Hazel. You kept your promise. You tended the tree." "Thank you." Hazel's eyes filled with tears. "You're awake." "I've been waking slowly for years, strong enough to sense you when you visit, to hear your every word, but not strong enough to appear. The tree needed time. I needed time. But now..." Willow looked at the little girl standing between them. "Now I think I woke up because someone new can see me." Hazel's daughter was staring at the Dryad with the same awed expression Hazel remembered wearing at 10 years old. "Are you made of tree?" "I am tree, and tree is me." Willow the Dryad tilted her head. "What's your name?" "I'm Willow, like the tree. That's what Mama named me." The Dryad's wooden face showed something like joy. She looked at Hazel. "You named your daughter for me? For you? For the tree? For what you taught me about patience and care and not giving up on things just because they take time?" Hazel wiped her eyes. "I visited when I could, checked on the tree, told you about my life. I didn't know if you could hear. I heard, in dreams, in the way trees hear, slow and deep. I heard about university, about Thomas, about your work, about this little one." The Dryad smiled at the girl. "I've been waiting to meet you." Little Willow walked closer to the Dryad with the fearless curiosity of children. "Are you magic?" "In a way. Are you?" "I don't think so." "You can see me. Most people can't. That's a kind of magic." Hazel watched her daughter and her oldest friend begin to talk, and felt something settle in her chest. She'd spent 21 years wondering if she'd done the right thing, if the transfer had worked, if Willow the Dryad had survived. And here was her answer. Not just survival, but recovery. Not just existence, but life. Her mother called from the house. Dinner was almost ready. Thanksgiving preparations were underway. Were they coming in? In a minute, Hazel called back. Little Willow looked up at her. Can we come back after dinner? I want to talk more. The Dryad answered before Hazel could. I'm not going anywhere. The tree is here. I'm here. You can visit whenever you like. They walked back to the house together. Little Willow chattering about the pretty tree girl. Hazel quiet and grateful. Her parents were in the kitchen, her mother mashing potatoes, her father basting the turkey. They looked older, grayer, more lined, but happy to have their daughter and granddaughter home. Everything okay out there? Her mother asked. Everything's perfect, Hazel said. That evening, after Thanksgiving dinner, after pie and coffee and the comfortable chaos of family gathering, Hazel returned to the tree alone. Little Willow had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted from the flight and the excitement, and Thomas was helping with dishes. Willow was waiting. I thought you might come back, the Dryad said. Hazel sat on the ground beneath the tree, leaning against its trunk the way she had when she was 10. I needed to thank you. Properly. You were my only friend when I desperately needed one. You taught me it was okay to be different, to be myself. I need to thank you again as well. You saved my life. You saved mine first. Maybe not literally, but I don't know who I would have become without you. Someone harder, maybe, more closed off. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The November stars were coming out overhead, and the willow's branches swayed in a light breeze, and everything felt circular and complete. Your daughter is lovely, Willow said eventually. She has your kindness, and she can see me, which means she'll need a friend who understands being different. Will you be that friend for her, the way you were for me? For as long as the tree stands, for as long as she needs me. That's what I'm here for, to be a companion to the lonely, friend to the different, guardian of this small, green space in a world that paves over too much. Hazel reached out and placed a hand on the tree's trunk. She still couldn't feel Willow directly. The Dryad was spirit and wood, not flesh, but she felt the tree's living warmth, its steady growth, its patient endurance. I wish I could visit more often. You visit enough. You live your life. That's what you're supposed to do. And now when you do come, you'll find me here. Not sleeping anymore. Awake. Waiting. Grateful. Little Willow's sleepy voice called from the house, and Hazel heard Thomas saying something about bedtime. She stood, brushing leaves from her jeans. I'll bring her back tomorrow, before we fly home. I'll be here. Hazel walked back to the house, to her family, to her life that spanned continents, and included a husband and daughter, and work she loved, and friends she'd made, and a confidence she'd grown into. All of it built on the foundation of one desperate autumn, when she was 10, when she'd been tall and lonely and different, and had found a friend who understood. Behind her, the willow tree stood quiet and strong, its branches moving in the November wind, its roots deep in earth that held a piece of ancient wood, its trunk sheltering a Dryad who had died and been reborn, who had slept for 21 years and woken to find the world changed. But some things, kindness, patience, the bond between lonely souls, remaining constant. The tree would stand for decades more, maybe centuries if tended well. And in it, Willow would wait and watch and befriend other lonely children, other different souls, continuing the quiet work of being exactly what she was, a small magic in a world that often forgot to look for it. Some friendships don't end. They just change form, take root in new soil, grow slowly toward the light. And some promises, kept with patience and care, bloom into something more beautiful than what was lost. Not a replacement, but continuation, a transformation, a gentle proof that love and loyalty can bridge even the longest sleep, the deepest change, the years that separate child from adult, from child again. The willow's branches whispered in the darkness, and if you listened carefully, if you were the kind of person who could see dryads and believe in quiet magic, you might have heard them saying, "Thank you. Welcome home. I'm here. I'll always be here." And that was enough. Tonight we discovered that belonging doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes it has roots instead of hands, and speaks in the rustling of leaves instead of words. I hope that, wherever you are, you find your willow tree. That one place or one soul that sees you exactly as you are and chooses you anyway. Rest now, dear wanderer. May the firefly's gentle glow guide you through the night.